This story was handed down to me. It's about my grandpa, and roughly goes like this. Grandpa is a young man in Sweden. He's exploring the woods with his friends. They've spent their entire lives in and out of the woods. They know every inch of it. But they come across these huge boulders that have inexplicably popped up in an area where they shouldn't be. Boulders are covered in patches of moss and mushrooms. Very unnatural looking, almost like they're deliberately adorned. One of Grandpa's friends says, "They're trolls," and they all get spooked because it's sunset, and trolls are supposed to move around after dark. They race out of there and head for home. Next day, go back. The boulders are gone. I post now with the sad knowledge of what is coming. I'm a time traveler and escaped the hell of 2030. You probably want to know how I did that. In the year 2027, shortly before 4chan was closed, an Anon on X posted a link to files with instructions for time travel. It's a psychological method. You can project your mind back in time to the body of your younger self. It is difficult, and I practiced it for 3 years until it worked. Now I'm in my younger body in the year 2023. It's amazing to be here in this free world, before the purge and the reset, but I want to go back further to my teenage self. But as I'm here now, I'll tell you some things about the future. Next year, the World Health Organization will be installed as the world's most powerful institution, with the power to execute global rules and regulations in case of a global emergency. And it will be the organization to decide what a global emergency is. And the organization will handle all of the media and public relations about facts, information, and misinformation. The next pandemic will start directly after this empowerment, with the Marburg virus. It will be like COVID again, just worse. Under the organization's command, the member nations will use military force to keep the people under control. Protests will be huge, but not even mentioned in public media. Actual quarantine concentration camps are coming. Have you seen the movie Songbird? Basically like this. Fast forward to 2027. The old internet is over. To log in, everyone needs a personal ID, and what you can access depends on your status and your score. The alternative media is gone. Image boards are gone. The dark web is gone. No more VPN and etc. Neuralink starts to become a real thing for those who want it. The enhanced bodies have MAC addresses and Wi-Fi. Cyberpunk becomes fucking real. 2029. The Purge. The left called it a civil war. The right, a revolution. Starting with a global economic collapse, the old society breaks. The chaos is violent, and the state of global emergency gives the government the right to use lethal force against civilians. 2 months of bloodbath, and the chaos is over. 2030. The New World Order. The nations exist only on the paper. In fact, they are just administrative areas, and they're divided into security zones. Zone A is only for citizens with special permission. As a normie, you can't go there. There are walls and checkpoints, and illegal entering of a zone that you have no clearance for brings you straight into prison. It's a system like China today. Kind of high-tech communism. The government tracks everything you do and tells you everything you have to do. Disobedience is terrorism, and the new UN law provides the option of execution for terrorism. It was hard to know what actually was going on, as there were no reliable media anymore. All I knew was the things I could see myself. I worked in a food factory that produced protein powder from maggots. There was some fancy technology, even for the non-Neuralinked people. VR sex was amazing, but I was worried that it somehow influences my brain, so I didn't do it much. In my free time, I focused on the time travel training, and now I'm here. It's like a sci-fi movie. Probably not uplifting for you, what I'll have to say, but that's the future. I'll leave that here for now. I think I will not go into a Q&A. I'm gonna lie down and go back to 2010 if I can. Enjoy your last years of freedom. I have a memory that still bugs me to this day. When I was about 10, my family had a dog. It was a retriever named Mooney, and we had him for about a year before he randomly disappeared one day. Parents said he must have run away, and we were all bummed because he was a great dog. Well, a week later, I see him wandering around the street, and I call out to him. He perks up and rushes over. I tell my parents, "Hey, look, Mooney's back!" And they seem really weird about it, almost sad. Years later, I bring this up to them, and they tell me that Mooney was a fucking bulldog. I just randomly brought a retriever home one day, insisting that it was our dog, Mooney. They figured I was just sad and coping, so they just let me keep the dog. Thing is, I don't remember ever having a bulldog. I don't think I was young enough to make that sort of mistake either. And I remember calling out to Mooney. He responded to his name. Whole thing fucking bugs the shit out of me. Work fast food part-time for extra bucks. Do kitchen work mainly. Guy who trained me ended up getting murdered by his own brother, actually. Still not sure why. Think it might have been over a woman. This dude now haunts the kitchen. Everyone knows it. Most of us have seen him. Those who haven't have at least heard or felt his presence. Personally, I've caught fleeting glimpses of him moving quickly past the oven and around corners. Other times, I just get the creeps suddenly, like I'm being watched. This one is really common. Other times, we can hear him cough, and this is extra creepy when you're alone. On certain nights, I have to finish up the shift entirely by myself. The last 30 minutes will just be me cleaning, then shutting off the lights before I lock up. This is always the worst part of the night. Feels like someone is right on your heels the entire time that you're walking around. Thinking about this just now actually gave me the creeps. Shutting off the lights requires going to the very back of the restaurant and walking all the way to the front in total darkness. I got in the habit of telling my old trainer, "Good night, sir," mainly to ease my nerves, but he also seems to like it. Creepy feeling dissipates as soon as I say it. Here's an OC that happened to me a few years ago. It's more weird than spooky, but whatever. Going back to my apartment after college. The first weird thing I notice is that my door is unlocked. My retarded ass probably forgot to lock it. Had to take a shit all day, so immediately go to the bathroom. Time to wipe. Notice that the toilet paper is of a brand that I never buy. I always buy the same one. Spend at least 5 minutes trying to rationalize how that is possible. Fuck it, whatever. Go to my room, sit down at my desk. Try to log into PC, type in my password. It doesn't work. Try it again and again, and it just doesn't work. Remember that my door was unlocked. Start to get spooked. While I struggle to log in, there's this stupid statue on my desk, looking at me mockingly. Pic very much related. What the fuck is this? I've never seen this one before. The last thing I remember is feeling a really sharp pain in my fingertips. Wake up in the emergency room. There's a nurse with me, making me drink water. Ask her what happened, but she's really rude for some reason, and doesn't say anything useful. After 15 minutes, a really old doctor and a fat cop comes in. They tell me that apparently I walked into some dude's apartment, and he found me on the floor when he came home. We talk for a while when he says that I probably had an anxiety episode. This never happened to me before, or ever since. They test me for drugs, then send me home the next morning. They give me my stuff, my shoes, backpack, phone, and etc. And for some reason, they gave me this stupid statue too. A strange phenomenon I keep experiencing. The same people again and again. Getting 1 hour train out of Osaka to mountains. It's packed. We're standing opposite 3 olds. Notice them for some reason more than everyone else. They are completely still. Never interact or look at anyone. But 2 occasionally turn and comment to each other. I spend a few minutes looking at the other one's mustache. Perfectly groomed. He never moves. Don't think much of this, or say anything. It's just some old people, but for some reason, commit them to memory. Get off train at the final stop. Don't see them leave. Go hiking. Gone several hours. Finally go back to the train towards the end of the day. Nothing special about the time that we return. File into the car. Different one, but even more packed this time. Look down. There they are. Exact same 3 people, in the same order, in the exact same seats in the car. directly in front of us, in the same position as before. My girlfriend immediately looks at me and says, "Isn't that the 3 old people from before?" We recount. Neither of us had spoken of them, but both had noticed and committed them to memory, for no obvious reason. They sit the whole ride back. Silence, no movement. Bloke's mustache just as impeccable as before. Talk about this a lot the rest of our trip. The quote-unquote train demons. Walking to work back home. Walk by 2 people, one on each side of a big apartment building's double door. They can't see each other. They are in recesses behind the door, but they are standing in identical relation to the door. One is young, seems to be an autistic girl, standing still other than one arm, which is shaking a water bottle back and forth, in an odd, useless way. Just shaking, the whole time she's in my view. The other is older. She is completely still, no interaction. Same situation. Not particularly notable individuals, but for some reason, I commit them to memory. Walk past the next day. There they are. This time, it's extremely uncanny and makes the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. They are exactly the same as the day before. Exactly. Identical positioning and facing in relation to the door and each other. Identical behavior. The girl is still shaking the bottle, exactly as she was the day before. I'm getting spooked, X. The train demons are back. See them like this a couple more times at this location. And then, never again. I walk there every day, but they've disappeared. What do you make of this? Am I being stalked? Have I attracted the attention of an entity? Here's mine. It's pretty spooky. Me and my friends are all in this weird drug rehab call for kids and young adults in North Carolina called Insight. Everyone just calls it The Group. We are always up all night drinking energy drinks and doing dumb shit. Some of us become obsessed with fear missions, going to haunted places, and sometimes setting up new members by hiding out and scaring them with elaborate plans and stories. One of the quote-unquote real fear missions, where nobody hides, is called Satan's Bridge. I've been there tons of times and not that scary, especially in large groups, but it's something to do. Satan's Bridge is in North Carolina, but leads into Virginia. Lots of stories of suicides and satanic sacrifice. We get there and park same as usual. Huge group this time, including lots of kids who never went on fear missions. We walk down the bridge. White rape van pulls up on us. It's about 1 a.m. on a weeknight, and this is in the sticks. Man in back seat swings the door open and says, "If you really want to see the devil, get in the van with us." We all run full speed back to car. Was pretty damn creepy, but nothing paranormal, I guess. We had found dead animals and bones and candles under the bridge before. I'll bite. Be me, about 7 or so, on a picnic with my family. Go to take my bicycle with me. Big field with hills and trees scattered about. Only us there. Ride my bike and go down steep hills. As I'm going back up, I see something. Weird-ass moving cloud thing, few meters away from me. It was colored a mix of black and red. Starts moving towards me. Oh fuck, that X. Take my bike as fast as I can to get back to the picnic spot. Dark cloud is chasing me, fairly fast too. After a bit, I turn around and realize the thing was gone. Nowhere in sight. Keep going to my family and don't look back. Tell Dad. That's nice and on. For some reason, I don't think much about it and try to go back to biking. Bike isn't moving. Look at tires. Thing was completely destroyed, shredded to bits. We head home after I tell Dad about broken bike. My mom beat my ass for the bicycle. Fuck you, dark cloud demon. Happened a few days ago. For some context, I live in an attic room in an old antebellum house. Be me, chilling in my room like always, vibing to J-bag. Hear something tapping in my ceiling. Fucking rats. Fuck these little shits. Start banging on the ceiling. Ceiling is sloped, so I can easily reach the bottom parts. Stop banging. Super loud knock comes from the exact spot that I was just hitting. What the fuck? Dead silence for a few seconds. I'm standing there, just staring at that spot. Get that sense that I'm not alone. Suddenly, the knocking continues, even louder than before, and it's coming from everywhere. like walls, floor, and ceiling simultaneously. I pissed something off that D-heat. I'm pissed too. Fucking demons ain't got shit on me. Ghost puncher mode that JPEG. Bang on the ceiling again. Come out, you little fucker. I know you're a bitch. Recite all the names of God I can think of. Knocking turns back into light tapping at just one place. Keep saying I'm gonna fuck whatever it is up. Tapping stops. I won that roar. Furiously beat my meat afterwards. Porn at full volume. Make sure to grunt and be extra loud myself. No encounter since. Actually, I just remembered an old memory of mine at that same house. I actually have a fair bit of paranormal stories revolving around this cursed place. My childhood room was in the oldest part of the home. It was a pretty huge room, to be honest. It was pretty common for my siblings to be sharing it sometimes. There was a big walk-in closet in there too, which I was always afraid of at night. When I was a kid, I had this recurring nightmare that went something like this. Be me, tucked in bed. I'm a real snoozer, .7-zip. Look up. Closet door open. Pitch black in there. Oh fuck. Feel something grab my leg and start dragging me into the closet. Eyes closed. I don't want to see it. Open eyes. I'm on the floor. Bunch of monsters looking down on me in a circle. Everything is illuminated in this dim bluish light that was somehow both warm and very, very cold. They start dragging me again. Wind up in parents' closet. Drag me further into the master bathroom. Throw me in the mirror. I'd wake up at this point and start freaking out usually. Every time I'd have this dream, something weird would happen to someone in the house too. Still can't figure it out. I used to work in this little retirement community, just helping around with landscaping, laundry, medicine, and deliveries. We would also do wellness checks on residents with a history of mental health issues, or physical health issues. Not too long ago though, in March, it kinda hit us that one of the residents who'd been there the longest, this old guy in his 60s, who was still rather spry and even mowed his own lawn, hadn't been seen at any of the little events that we would host for the old folks. Now, we knew he was reclusive. We thought he must have been just sticking to himself or doing one of his hobbies. We decided it was time to conduct a wellness check because he hadn't been seen by anyone in months. I was one of the people who went into his house. There were just 2 of us, and we knocked. No answer. I started getting that pit in my stomach, and so we knocked harder. I tried peeking through the windows, and the lights were off. I didn't want to be a creep and peep into the shower or his bedroom. So, we decided to ring up one of the security guards to get a key to his home. We got in, and everything was caked in dust. Everything. Like that kind of dust buildup where you run your hand over a countertop, and it creates a thick layer on your palm. We split up to look through each room, but the guy I was with found him first. The fucked up thing? He must have died standing up or something, and he stayed that way for days, weeks, or months, however long it had been. We found him in the basement, his almost skeletal corpse just leaning up against the wall. The plaster stained with this like vomit putrid shit yellow. It was too late to do an autopsy and determine a cause of death, but he wasn't in hospice care or anything. Just kinda freaks me out. What the fuck are dreams? Does anyone else have fucked up dreams that feel like a fake virtual reality to keep you closed from the real existence? I'll share some of my dreams to explain what I mean. Dream 1. Be me. Was feeling very dead inside because of pain in real life. Had a dream where some demon girl with blood all over her face was trying to scare me, but unlike the other nightmares, I didn't care anymore. I just asked her random esoteric questions because I became semi-lucid thinking, oh, I'm talking to a demon. I guess I'm dreaming. I asked her what happens when we die, and she tells me we get reset. Then I asked how to astral project, and suddenly, something like a console opened up in front of my eyes, and then she sent me something that looked like a link. I looked at it, and I woke up very, very lucid in my old apartment. I could feel the air and everything else was realistic. Since I tried to astral project for a long time, with the goal of finding something when out of body, and confirm of it being real, the moment I woke up very lucid in my apartment, I instantly tried to fly to where I live, but when I would get at the half point, I would get teleported back like in a video game. where you're going in an area you're not supposed to go. Dream 2. I was chilling at school and suddenly realized that I finished school a long time ago, and everything froze when I became aware that I'm dreaming. When I touched the tables and people, they were feeling like sponge. Everything was very fake. I became aware of this, and suddenly, after a few seconds, it's like someone changed the stimulation to be more realistic. Everything was very realistic after this. Dream 3 is the dream that I had today, and I'm writing the post because of this. This was a very long dream, and I was semi-lucid for a good part of it. It was about keeping some monsters that looked like a mix between alien movie monsters and dinosaurs in containment. At the end of the dream, I went to a restaurant, and there were a lot of burgers and fries on the table when I got there. Being on a diet, I thought asking the person near me a question. If someone was on a diet and he was lucid dreaming, would eating that affect him since he still completely feels the taste and knows what he eats? Couldn't the brain be fooled and actually affect the body? After this, he smiles and looks at me like he knows I'm aware that I'm dreaming, and that he's aware that I'm dreaming, and he just says, "Lamau." After this, hell begins. I woke up in another dream thinking it's reality. I went downstairs and, for some reason, I'm suddenly eating fries. I thought that I didn't have any fries. How are they in my mouth? I started looking for them, and I couldn't find them. I don't remember exactly what happened to scare me, to wake me up in another dream. This was just the first one, and I don't remember much. After this, I woke up about a dozen times, each time being aware that I was dreaming, and thinking that this time, I really woke up. I would start by running and seeing if the people I'm living with are there, and after seeing them, I would become more relaxed, but I would eventually find a flaw, and the people near me would weirdly transform into monsters. It was like some fucked up horror movie every time, with me waking up in another dream. I felt like I was being punished for becoming lucid. The only way I woke up is by becoming so desperate that the moment I woke up, I was instantly moving, trying to crawl to another room. And this, somehow, made me move a bit in real life. So, what the fuck is this? Am I getting Loosh farmed even when sleeping, or what just happened? It's also weird that the strongest emotions you ever feel are in dreams. If you think about it, it's more real than reality when it comes to emotions. How can you integrate your inner child into your consciousness? Open your mind to childlike things. When you look at something, don't assume it's what you were told. Ignore that voice telling you that you know what it is. Look at what is there. From there, use your mind to wonder what it could be. Also, when you look at something, take time to admire it. Look at the way light scatters through leaves. Smell that bite of food before you shove it into your mouth. Poke a couch cushion and enjoy the feeling of the fabric and foam. Explore and enjoy what is right in front of you. Lastly, remember that pain and suffering come from without. You can choose to internalize it or not, but let the pain go. Feel the good things in you and around you. There are tons of good things everywhere, from how your muscles twitch to react to your thoughts, to the way a fan blows cool air on your skin. Find the good things and latch onto them. Let the bad things go. Everything you describe is what they all lose over time, friend. Sounds like Anan is somehow looking for a way to gain all these practices back, and I highly recommend looking back at all the things that made them happy as a kid. Then, finding ways to connect with those things, and spending more time nurturing their diminished self. That's just it. You never really lose it. You are told what things are, and you blindly accept it. You are told not to touch, not to look, not to explore, and to obey. You are told to act in a certain way, and conform. But you can choose not to. Choosing not to is how you return to the childlike self. The way you connect with those things is by ignoring what you were told. From there, just reach out and interact with the world. Keep your mind as blank as possible at first. Then, later on, start wondering, what else could this be? Just like a child does when playing. It takes time and may have to go in steps, but anyone can do it with no training, with no doctrine, and no outside substances. It is simply listening to your natural self more and more, to allow your curiosity and enjoyment of the little things come out to play. That's all. When I was 10, I may have permanently damaged the hearing of a much smaller child. When I was an older kid, maybe 10, I was hanging out with the neighborhood kids. Well, there was this little one, probably around 6 or so, that followed us around. One day, we were running around shooting empty BB guns at each other. We would just cock it and pull the trigger. No BB came out, but it made a muffled sort of thumping sound. Anyway, at some point, I put the muzzle of one of the pistols in the 6-year-old's ear and pulled the trigger at point-blank range. I will never forget the confused look on his face. Almost like, "Why did you do that?" He cried and ran home, but the rest of us just thought he was being a wuss because, well, he was little, so we went on with our day. Well, even though the BB pistol wasn't loaded, that burst of air ruptured his eardrum. His dad talked to my dad and I lied about it, of course, scared to death. That kid never came back outside, and we moved a few months later, unrelated. I am in my mid-30s, and I still think of that kid. I wonder if his hearing is permanently damaged. I hate that I never apologized. I hate how I took no responsibility, and I hate how cowardly I was to lie to my dad about it. It fills me with so much shame. My first 2 tattoos on human skin, other than my own, were on 2 13-year-old children who were not mine. I am one of those ill-advised deviants, 41 female, learning to tattoo from YouTube videos on an Amazon tattoo machine. Although I have worked hard to make sure sanitization comes first, because I've seen the aftermath of infected tattoos. And I bought some good quality black ink separately. I mostly got the machine because there are so many small, simple tattoos that I want to get. I would rather save my money doing the simple ones myself and getting the bigger, more complex ones professionally done. So, my intention was not to really work on other people. I started on practice skins and finally felt comfortable trying one on myself last week. It turned out fine, but I had trouble getting the depth right, and I mentioned this to my friend. She offered to let me practice on her, so we made arrangements for me to come by on Friday. I showed up Friday with all my supplies, and as I was setting up, 2 of her kids were sitting around watching me. She came in and told them, "What did I say?" They jumped up and ran to the laundry room, so I laughed, asking, "How'd you manage to get those kids to do laundry?" There are 5 of them, so the laundry really sucks. That's when she told me she made a deal with the 2 oldest kids, both 13, that if they did the laundry, they could each get a tattoo. You guys, my jaw was on the floor. I never ever thought I would be in a position where I was faced with the prospect of giving 2 children their first tattoos. These kids loved me, so I didn't want to be the asshole to tell them no. And in my state, it is apparently legal to tattoo minors with the parents' permission. I don't think I've ever Googled something so fast. Then, their mom, my friend, decided to cook dinner and had them go first. So the first and second tattoos I did on anyone other than myself ended up being on 13-year-old children. One of them got a cross on his leg and the other got her first initial with a cross together on her stomach. They turned out okay. Thankfully they were simple. And the kids were troopers and didn't cry or anything, but I feel really guilty knowing that they're going to have to live with these mediocre tattoos for the rest of their lives. Then, today, my worst nightmare happened. The girl texted me letting me know her friends loved her tattoo, and now they all want one. Now I'm having to tell her no, I'm not tattooing another literal child. Even if their parents say it's okay, I'm not trying to go to jail for this. I'm pretty sure the charge for tattooing a minor is written like unlawful penetration or something too. So, I'm extra not trying to get charged for this. I am kind of upset with my friend for putting me in this position, but I guess if she's fine with it, then I need to get over it. It just felt so wrong. I used to emotionally abuse people and then laugh about it. I was very young at the time, but I would intentionally, verbally, and emotionally abuse people around me. It started with me telling my mom I hated her, just because I got a thrill when she said that I hurt her by saying that. I would say it over and over until I would see her get really upset, and then I would pretend to be sorry and apologize. I don't know how many times over the few years I acted like this, but it was enough that, even years later, I remember doing it. I was worse to my first real friend. I would dangle our friendship over her head and tell her awful things about how I was the only person that liked her, and that if she didn't do what I told her, I wouldn't be her friend anymore. I would talk about how much I hated her and force her to do everything my way. I did all of this at 4 to 5 years old. No, I'm not joking. I was that young and that cruel. I legit got a little jolt every time I made them upset. I thrived off of emotionally abusing them, and then would giggle as they expressed how distraught they were at my words. My friend, rightfully, refused to hang out with me once we started kindergarten. I only had one friend because of how awful I was, and I started gaining weight, and, as shown by my own behavior, children can be cruel. I started to get bullied, and it never really stopped until my junior year of high school. I made other friends throughout the years, and while I was never that cruel again, I was thoughtless in my actions at times. I never did anything like I did as a small kid, however. I have thought of reaching out to my ex-friend before, try to apologize, but we're in our mid-20s now, and she seems to be living her life to the fullest. Our friendship was ultimately short, and she benefited from no longer allowing me in her life. Doesn't mean I don't think about what would have happened if I was never bullied. I'm scared to this day that I would have been a real monster. Edit. After some thought, I sent a message via Facebook. I let her know that I was sorry for how I treated her in the past, that I don't expect her to forgive me, but that she deserved an apology after what I did to her. I don't know if she'll respond, but since I can only apologize to one of them, I felt it was good for closure. I fell and put the blame on a disabled kid for it. I have absolutely no memories of this incident, but it's been eating me ever since my sister told me about it. Back when we were young, my sister and I used to do karate. I don't remember many things about that place in general since I was so young, but my sister told me that there was a disabled kid that looked taller than most of the other kids and acted differently. His parents were always the only ones watching us from the waiting room. One day, I fell and hit my knees pretty hard. The coach asked me what was wrong, and I said that the disabled kid pushed me, even though I fell on my own. I can't believe I did something like that. I'm not sure if my sister is just messing with me because she would never do that just for fun. We both understand that there is nothing funny about making fun of disabled people, which makes me think that I was an evil-ass child. I threw a friend's photo album in the garbage when I was 9. My friend brought a photo album with all of her baby pictures to school. It had pictures of her as a baby, and she was very excited to show us. When she left it aside during recess, I took it. I honestly don't know why I did it. I just did. I brought it straight to my house and dug it deep in my trash. To make things worse, it had her hospital bracelet from when she was a newborn. Now that it's been over 10 years, I just feel god-awful. I purposefully made my student fail. Here's why. European school. I, 29 female, have been an 8th grade teacher for 2 years. I'm posting this on my little sister's old account because, somehow, my students found my main account. Not the point, but anyway, here's why I failed them. For this confession, I will be calling my students their initials. So, we had a test last month. One of my students, Jay, was bragging to a kid that barely passes each test that they would fail again. Now, this kid, M, usually gets a 60 to 70, or a grade of D or C, and Jay is getting 80s and 90s. M is in a special learning program. Won't be disclosing why, as it's her privacy. And Jay has bullied M since the 5th grade. And, shocker, Jay is the eldest in the class, and M is the youngest. Every test, Jay brags that they would get an A+, even when he gets an A- to B+. And I generally had enough of his taunting. Last month, when we took the test, I made sure to give him a different version to the test, which is for 9th and 10th grade students. I watched as he struggled, and when the result for him came back, he got a D-, and I gave M an easier version, and she got a B+. Recently, Jay has stopped teasing M, so I think he learned his lesson. Kid took a test 2 years older than him and fucking passed it still? I mean, D- is still passing though, what the fuck? I accidentally started someone's front yard on fire when I flicked my cig out the car window. I was driving through an old rundown neighborhood while smoking a cigarette on the way home from a friend's house. This was the side of town where the grass was definitely not green. It was an area I wasn't used to being around, and the GPS had me hella confused. I was at a stop sign by myself when I flicked my half-smoked cigarette out the window in the direction of the curb, thinking it would just go out. I spent about 5 minutes going down another road before I turned back to try to get to the main street. And lo and behold, this entire yard was ablaze, and an elderly couple was trying to put it out with Tupperware bowls full of water, which was doing nothing to put the fire out. I pulled over to help them and called the fire department before the fire reached the house. I stayed around until the fire was completely put out, and one of the firemen picked up a cigarette butt and likeness to my own, saying it started the fire because the grass was so dry. They also indicated that this was a pretty common and dangerous way that fires start. I didn't admit that it was mine, solely because I didn't want to face arson charges, but I felt so bad seeing the elderly couple stare at their burned yard in shock and anger. After making sure they were okay, I went on my way. I even stopped to get an ash cup before getting home. I constantly think about that day because I wouldn't have learned my lesson if I hadn't turned back. Plus, imagine how much worse it would have been if the house caught on fire. I'm just glad they're okay, and I wonder what the yard looks like now. I'll try to keep this as accurate as possible, but it's been shoved deep in my memory bank for years. Certain details are fuzzy, but here goes nothing. A little over a decade ago, I was working for the local cable/internet company. I was fresh out of high school, and it was my first real job. I should mention that sometime in my preteen years, I developed a habit of snooping through people's things. Whether it was at a family member's house or a friend's house, I would always manage to slip away into people's rooms or closets and bathrooms, and I'd poke around, looking for secrets and hidden items. I would never steal anything, just take mental note of the things I found, and put them back without leaving a trace. So, as you can imagine, landing a job that placed me in people's houses to install cable was almost guaranteed to stir up a desire to indulge in my long-forgotten habit. When installing wires for TVs and computers, I would end up in crawl spaces, closets, behind desks, and sometimes under beds to reach outlets and such. I would stumble on things like porn collections, embarrassing personal hygiene products, and, more than a few times, extremely large collections of sex toys. After a while, it went from stumbling upon these things to outright looking for them. Most homeowners were too lazy to follow me from room to room, so they would either be downstairs or outside in the yard while I went about doing my job. Like I said, I wasn't taking anything, just observing. About 4 or 5 months into me working this job, I ended up at a woman's house. She was in her late 20s or early 30s, I'd guess. White with sandy blonde hair, and a sort of hippie/bohemian vibe that was popular around my area, mixed with a bit of emo. It's a weird combo, I know. She had a pretty big house for a single person, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, and multiple living areas, but it appeared that she was the only one living there, other than her cat, who would occasionally run by as I was doing my job. She let me know that she would be outside on her porch, and to let her know if I needed anything. The house was quiet and big, so I knew I'd be able to hear her coming, and have plenty of time to clean up if I happened to do some snooping around. The perfect storm. All in all, it was pretty uneventful. I carried on with my work, but I would every so often take a peek around at her things. She was pretty hot to me, so I probably would have been excited to find something that would allude to her sexual side, but no such luck. Just papers, knickknacks, some stuff that appeared to be schoolwork, but peeking out from her pillow was a notebook, similar to the old cow print ones we would use in school. I knew for sure, given the placement, that it had to be a diary of some sort. I looked around to make sure she was still outside, and then cracked it open. Boring. The first few pages were random notes, planning, grocery lists, far from the scandalous journaling about sexcapades and one-night stands that I'd hoped for. And just as I was about to put it back, I turned the page and saw a few words that caught my eyes. Some things along the line of panic, anxious, and safe. With concern and excitement, I went on to read a detailed story written in first person about her hitting a man over the head, realizing he wasn't conscious, and recruiting help cleaning up the mess, and dumping the body in a nearby river. She also journaled about the anxiety and paranoia that she felt, about everything that happened, and the stress of sharing the secret with the person who helped her dump the body. I remember being extremely uneasy, and feeling more creeped out in that house every minute that passed by. The silence of that house that I previously found peaceful started to bother me. Even the jingling of the cat's collar was beginning to haunt me, like something out of a horror movie. I was terrified that I would be caught, and that she would take me out to ensure I wouldn't tell about what I read. But I managed to power through the job and got the hell out of there. On the drive home, I managed to convince myself that I probably just stumbled on her notes or an excerpt from some fictional novel that she was writing. It did read more like a novel than a personal diary passage, but honestly, there's no telling. I left it off with a few friends later on and never spoke much of it again. It's been so long, I can barely remember the woman's face, her house, or even the town. But, for my sake, possible murderous hot hippie chick, let's not meet. When I was about 9 or 10, I was invited to a classmate's birthday party at some swimming baths. All of us the same age. It was a small class of about 20 kids, and I'm pretty sure everyone was invited. And just to clarify, I'm a boy. Anyway, I kind of got separated from everyone, and it was just me and this girl alone. I wasn't particularly close friends with her, but I did know her as she was in my class. To describe the location we were in, it was in a tunnel that connected the main wave pool to a lazy river. There wasn't really anybody else there, just me and her, when she suddenly lunged at me without warning. She grabbed my head and held it underwater. I was a pretty skinny kid and she was bigger than me, and a bit of a tomboy. About 20 seconds went by as I furiously tried to free myself, but she wasn't letting go. Fight or flight and mask panic took over, and I eventually fought my way free. I was coughing and spluttering water as I emerged. I remember looking at her and being just in shock. I think I began to ask why she did that, when she lunged at me again. She again held my head underwater for what felt like a lifetime, before I fought my way free. Both times, I genuinely thought I was going to drown, and she didn't let me up. I had to fight my way free. I couldn't swim at this time, but the water in the lazy river and tunnel was just maybe chest high. I began to backpedal away from her, and she was giggling as if it was funny, and had this kind of crazed look and grin on her face. I couldn't just climb out to escape as it was a tunnel, so I had to try and get out of there. As I was backpedaling, she was following me, and I made sure to keep distance so she couldn't lunge again, but she was gaining on me. I actually managed to reason with her, as I was so scared of her, I was babbling at her. I tried to distract her by suggesting we go down a water slide together, and it worked, as I could see her thinking about it, and she stopped chasing me. I managed to exit the tunnel and water, and she slowly followed me, but seemed a bit unsure. I immediately felt more safe as I was out of the water, and could see other people about as we headed towards the slides. I kept talking all the way up about how fun the slides were, but she didn't really speak at all, and had a really strange look on her face the full time. Anyway, after we went down the slides, I caught up with my friends and just stuck with them the rest of the time, as I was a bit shook up. I never told them about it, as it was a bit embarrassing to admit that a girl tried to drown me, and I was worried I'd get teased. Anyway, fast forward to adulthood. This girl turned out to be a lesbian. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but she got with her partner who had 2 or 3 kids from her previous relationship with a guy. Turns out, they would torture the kids and eventually killed one of them. She is currently serving a life sentence in prison. I told my friends about the swimming pool incident after hearing about her crimes, and I'm pretty sure they think I'm just bullshitting as none of them took me seriously. Maybe as I kind of lightheartedly said I was almost victim number 1. However, nonetheless, it is a bit crazy to think back, as she obviously was a genuine psychopath, and if I'd never fought her off of me to escape, and then convinced her to go down that slide, I genuinely believe she could have killed me.